Welcome to Mattys Mental Health Podcast, aiming to spread awareness on mental health by sharing the real-life stories of those who've experienced it firsthand. Hello!
Hello.
Austin Lynds.
It's Lynds.
Lines.
We're off to a great start, but you know what?
Okay. 1, 2, 3. Austin Lines.
There we go. You know what? It's a tidbit. Everybody on P.E.I. calls me Lynds. Up until the last week of Holland College, like sport and leisure management, Wyatt called me Lynds, and I only had the heart to tell him that I was Lines, and then I just saw his face like I had just told him his child died.
Why'd you wait so long, man? It's 2 years.
I was like, I don't know if I should say it. It's like I was almost intimidated by the guy when I started because he was so much bigger than me, and he's also I had a lot of respect for him. Mm-hmm. He's been a real mentor to me since I moved here.
Yeah.
But then I was just like, you know what? Like, I already destroyed one of his bars. Like, I've worked here at the gym for like 2 years. We're on a pretty good basis. I'm like, Wyatt, that's not my last name. Because I didn't know when I would get to see him again, right? After I graduated, I didn't know I was coming back. So I was just like, Wyatt.
Before I leave. You're saying my name wrong.
He felt so bad. I felt so bad for saying it. But.
Well, dude, everyone called you that, I think.
Yeah.
So it's not my fault.
No, it's not. Everybody still calls me, like Amy calls me Lindsay. Like my best friend calls me Lindsay all the time just to piss me off. But it works. But, you know, I'm good about it.
Yeah. So we went to school together. We went for sport and leisure management kinesiology course together.
2015, 2017.
Yeah, that was us. We did that.
That was our time.
We completed it.
My frat boy days, I got to bed at 9 o'clock and woke up at 5 and went to the gym.
Yeah. You were off the rails.
Yeah, I was such a wild kid.
You were. No, man, you were definitely inspiring to me and definitely still are, just by the amount that you work out is crazy.
I've been doing it for like almost 10 years.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. Like, I'm not like an old dude either. Like, everybody had their thing. And for me, I think partially because it actually was mental health related, mine was fitness. I was shit at every sport ever. And I grew up in a really, I was so uncoordinated. It's like, I played, whether it was like baseball or hockey or basketball or soccer. I didn't have the agility for basketball. I was good at the time I was fat, so I couldn't run. So soccer, everything was pretty much out the window. I had the build for hockey, but I couldn't skate. Still can't skate. Real bad Canadian.
I can't skate either, so it's okay.
Yeah, and I didn't have the attention span or the coordination for baseball at the time as a kid. I was just a short fat kid that played GameCube all the time. But right. At least that's what it was like physically kind of thing. As a result, I had really low self-esteem, and like most of my childhood was spent like just being not bullied, but like I spent a lot of my childhood having the worst self-esteem imaginable and just thought of myself as absolute fuck all. Partially because I think the people around me who wanted me to do better were going about it in the wrong way. Because I came from, for those of you who don't know, small town Pugwash, Nova Scotia, which is like makes Charlottetown look like Metropolis. Like when I moved to Charlottetown, I was culture shocked.
What's it called? Pugwash?
Pugwash, yeah.
Oh.
So no pugs in sight, and there's not even a car wash. Like, and their animal for their school is panthers. Like, really? They missed a perfect marketing scheme for that. Like, man, step your game up. But
I thought that was like an expression or something, like pugwash.
Nah, pugwash is a thing. Nova Scotia, man, pugwash, it's a thing.
Yeah.
And I'm really proud of my roots because I came from nothing, and I did a lot more than a lot of people from that area. Like, nothing against them. Like, most people are just like, I just want a job, and I just want to pay the bills and do my thing, and that's fine and great. But for me, I still have a lot of ambitions. Yeah. But it all started with weightlifting. So I grew up in a chaotic-ish childhood. My parents divorced when I was 16. I won't get into details why, obviously, just for the sake of, out of respect for my parents. But a lot of it had to do with the relationship between myself and my father. And we have a good relationship now, but he and I clashed a lot as people. And we've always had a tough, rocky relationship as a result, because like it wasn't that he wasn't a good father. It's just I was his first kid, and he was learning how to be a father.
Right.
And he obviously, like, nobody's perfect, but you know, as a result of the upbringing where he was always gone, and when he was around, it wasn't like there wasn't a lot of positive memories, at least for me growing up as a kid. And just kind of the house we lived in, the environment we lived in, he was working all the time. And when he wasn't working during the summer, he was playing baseball kind of thing with like his buddies, because he loved baseball and that was his thing. So like a lot of my childhood was like me, my mom, my brothers. And I sort of took on the role of like the dad from like 5. So there's a lot of pressure, a lot of responsibility on my shoulders from that. And as a result of dealing with both that, and also I think just so that dad could get me to do something athletic, because he was always super hard on me for not being athletic, because he was, and in his mind that's what I should be.
Yeah.
He got me a weight set. So kind of played around with it until so like, yeah, and this is a bit of a longish story, but if we are talking about mental health, I think it's important.
Yeah, for sure.
So like there was a close friend throughout my life in my earliest years that sort of served as a father figure to me growing up. And during, like, eventually he passed away, and obviously I didn't know how to deal with that as a kid, right? It was the first real experience I had with death. So my outlet for that, and then also just being bullied and stuff and being frustrated about that, was weightlifting. And I actually started, like, dad bought me the weight set, but I expressed interest and started doing it more and more when I was watching WWE, and I saw Dave Bautista just going around, this big jacked up half Filipino dude with tattoos everywhere, and he's just dropping bodies left, right, and center. And in my mind as a kid, I was like, man, that guy looks like a fucking superhero.
Yeah.
So I was like, I want to be that. So, you know, carried that, and it just sort of started as something I was doing because I wanted to get big and I wanted to get stronger, and I wanted to be that person that I thought, because he was big and strong and muscular, he could handle the world. And also so that kids would stop bullying me, and you know, to have something to myself. And it just eventually became like almost every part of my life. It affected every part of my life, from discipline to hard work to tenacity to, you know, going to stupid lengths to accomplish a fitness goal. Like when I was in junior high, I'd get up at 5 and go for a run up a kilometer-long dirt road kind of thing, just before I got ready to school. Partially because I was fucking crazy. Didn't matter what time of the year it was, winter, rain, nothing. Every day I was up and going. And then I'd weight train sometime that evening. But I was like, because I was a kid, I wasn't growing at all. So I just kept pushing more and more, trying to grow. But yeah, so as a result, it really had a profound impact on my development, and it brought me to where I was, where I had a standard by the time I got to the college of what I expected out of myself. So I was never good at school because I had massive undiagnosed ADHD, anxiety, and depression. And so like I had the mental obstacles to deal with, but I used the physical to deal with it.
So and you find relief in exercise from the mental obstacles? Yeah.
It's been good and bad. There's been periods where it's been really significantly helpful. There's been periods where I had to, like, where I took it too far, right? There's a point where you can take it too far. And I learned that because I got into powerlifting right after I went through a really bad breakup. And we're on good terms now. I'm on good terms now with this person. Like, we're civil, and it's all in the past and nothing against them. But at the time, a major emotional support for me was kind of just boop out from underneath me.
Yeah.
So as a result, I poured full into training. Like, my life was school and the gym. I'd get up at 5, I'd train, I'd go to classes, I'd eat obviously a couple times throughout the day, I'd train again. And if we had one of Wyatt's workout classes, like one of his practicums, then I'd be 3 times a day I'd be training, kind of thing. But I was prepping for powerlifting because that was the only thing that made sense to me. My emotions didn't make sense. What I was thinking about myself, which was my depression and anxiety, were in overdrive, and I just refused to accept it. You know, because toxic masculinity. And I was just a really stubborn, like I was so dead set on powerlifting as an outlet. Like I didn't even want to spend money on shampoo because I could spend it on food. So I shaved my head the dead of winter. Remember when I showed up? It was like January and I showed up looking like fucking Megamind into the classroom. That's like,
that's
that
why.
was it. Yeah, that's why. Because I was
It's intense, man.
It was, I just didn't care about anything else, right? To me, if I couldn't lift, then there was no point in getting out of bed.
So it kind of became like a distraction.
Yeah.
At some point.
Yeah.
Too.
And it didn't, like after my comp, like after, I think it was the Prince County Open was my first ever powerlifting competition. And I did really well. But it was after that comp, I went home for the summer, I worked. And my body kind of got worn down because I wasn't training the same way. My activity level was different. I was overworking myself. And then I got back to school and I went right back into powerlifting full tilt. And I tore my MCL partially and then injured my sciatic nerve. So like they said it was a 30% tear of my MCL, which eventually healed, thankfully. Because like if it's only 30%, like it can
heal itself back,
heal itself on your own through physio and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
But then I developed like a sciatic irritation, which eventually went to full-blown sciatica. Which, for those of you who don't know, the sciatic nerve is the biggest nerve in the body. You have two of them. They run down both your legs, and they insert in your lumbar spine. It's like your lower back.
Yeah.
And basically, it's if your lumbar, like the vertebrae down that way, if it pinches or puts pressure on the nerve or damages it in any way, kind of thing, for whatever reason, usually a postural thing. I've got bad, like, chicken butt posture kind of thing, chicken chest posture. I just always have. But as a result, it was like my whole left leg was just in constant pain. And I just couldn't walk a lot of the time. And because I didn't have a car and still don't, I had to walk everywhere, like to campus, to P.E.I, like, and I lived in Sherwood, so it'd be like 30-minute walk, like uphill to get back home in the middle of winter on one leg. So like when your grandparents are telling you that I had to walk through like 60 miles of shed and 3 blizzards and 2 ice ages and a megafauna and all this whole thing, and they're like, I had to walk all carrying 60 pounds of things. It's like, yeah, me too. I get it now, Gramps. It's like I thought that wasn't true, but but apparently it happens. So
this is why I'm saying you're inspiring, because like I have you on Snapchat and you'd make stories of you like walking. It'd be like a blizzard. I remember days where like school is clearly gonna be closed, but you'd still like be at school, and then you'd be walking home, and like you just make a Snapchat of you like
adventuring
walking like on the trail, like clearly long walk. It's like minus 40 in a fucking blizzard.
Well, because to me it was like exciting. Like I like blizzard walking.
It's a good time to walk.
Apparently, yeah, it's a great time in my mind.
Yeah.
But like when I was in like our last year at Holland, and we had the bad, like it wasn't the 2015 winter, but it was close, like worst winter I had seen in a long time. And I still would walk to Good Life even if the college was closed because I had to train. And there was no way around it. So I was like, I have to train kind of thing. Otherwise, it was partially like I would fall behind on my numbers in powerlifting, but it was also I'd get in my head. And if I got in my head, that's a really dangerous place for me to be at the time.
So what is that, what's it like for you being in your head? Say if you missed a day of training.
Better now, but at its worst, when I'm overloaded with stress or something happens, my training is my outlet. So when I can't train for usually 3 days is when I start to notice it now. For 3 days without training, and I start to feel it's more like my sense of self-worth dissipates, like just disintegrates. I get super anxious. Like my anxiety is just dialed up to 11 all the time. I can't focus on things. My brain is everywhere. And then because of ADHD, so like I'm focused on things, I'm distracted, I'm forgetting things, and then I'm beating myself up in my head about forgetting about it. Like, you fucking moron, what are you doing? And then there I am suddenly, not this 22-year-old powerlifter, but this scared little kid that I was growing up who had no control over anything. I think for me, it's a control situation. Because when I do my training, especially if I do training in the mornings, like I've been doing a lot lately, it anchors me. It gives me a sense of control over my day. It gives me a sense of control over how I respond to situations. And I feel like I can take control of situations when need be. But when I can't do that, to any capacity, then I feel like I've lost the thing that grounds me. And as a result, I've lost control of how I respond to things.
Mm-hmm.
So the issue for me was the fact that as a result of that, I didn't know how to be vulnerable because I didn't teach myself to be vulnerable. And I owe a lot to, my friends in my youth group, the Junior Youth Empowerment Program that we do out at the Bahai Center. They're all dear friends of mine. I owe that to them. And I also owe a big, heartfelt thank you to, people like Anne-Marie, Amy is her nickname. The friend I had mentioned before, who lives in Summerside with her husband, because especially when we were both at P.E.I, I don't like, it's hard for me to vocalize it. But there was a lot of periods in my life that because of her friendship, I knew it was what got me through the day. And a lot of times it was the guise of like, no, I should be there because she needs me to be there today because she's dealing with a lot of stress and she needs a friend. But even in the fact that I could just be there and spend however long hanging out with her because she was my friend and she helped humble me and she helped ground me as a person. And because I just looked at her as family kind of pretty early on, as a result of that, I was able to look at I was able to remind me that it's not so bad. So she was also like, when time comes like that I need to voice something or vocalize something or talk to somebody about it, I know she's there. She's always been there kind of thing, because I've always been there for her as well, right? We've always had each other's back. So, she's also the person, like, she's like my mom in a lot of ways, that she calls me on my shit. And my mom ended up being another major anchor. My mom's like my best friend, right? Like, always has been. And she knows me better than anybody. So when it comes time that I'm dealing with shit, people like Amy or my mom are really able to kind of bring me back down to earth. And remind me that like I'm not alone and that I'm not stuck in this nightmare that sometimes I find myself in. But it was also, I think, in a lot of ways because of those people that I'm still here. Because there was a point just before I left P.E.I where my mental health had gotten so bad that I just was having multiple anxiety attacks, depressive spells where I just wouldn't get out of bed. My hair got really long and greasy. My beard, it was like last winter. My beard was getting really long, like unkempt. I just stopped caring about my appearance and my health. I was eating pizza on the regular instead of training and eating well. And I just look at that person and I see pictures of that person. I'm like, he's broken. He's defeated, straight up. And to me, because of who I am as a person, that is not just almost unacceptable as a person to me, but it's also like in my mindset, in my toxic mindset, when I would look at that, I was like, that's unacceptable. But then I'm like, no, you were dealing with so much on your plate at the time, and you refused to seek help. Like, I just refused to seek help until it got to the point where there was no option, and I was in and out of the ER because there was so many different things wrong with me, and my anxiety made it 10 times worse. That I just couldn't cope. Like, coping just was not a thing that I was able to do anymore, because on top of all this, I couldn't train because I don't know what was wrong with me, if I had a sinus infection or what it was, but I just was having asthma attacks left, right, and center, because I've got asthma apparently as well. And like dizzy spells, fatigue spells, falling over spells, and also my sciatic nerve was so bad during that time period, off and on, that I didn't know if that was the day that I was gonna, it was just gonna give out on me. So my body was essentially broken for the better part of this last couple of years, and it's only just now getting better because I've actually been proactive about it. Imagine that. And the people around me really kept me above water when I couldn't do that for myself. And for somebody so based, who's based his life around strength of self, strength of character, being the strong person people turn to when they're dealing with shit, that to me was, I was in an unfamiliar place. So it was when I lost the ability to cope through training, even when I was training, it wasn't helping. It was something, and it still is something that I'm learning. Like, training doesn't have the same impact on me, because now it's not the distraction or the escape, but it's something that I'm doing because I enjoy it and I'm having fun with it again, which is good. Yeah. But it has a good impact on my mental health, but for different reasons. And I know that I can't just rely on it when shit gets heavy. So,
Yeah. I think it's just kind of like a maintenance of health, like eating healthy and exercise.
Yeah.
Kind of a,
It's it's such a major tool, like it's such a major weapon against your demons when you're dealing with that. To have taking care, prioritizing your health, prioritizing your fitness and your exercise and stuff like that, because it really makes things easy in regards to when you're not, like in comparison to when you're not doing it.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah. So you said you ended up in the ER a few times?
Yeah.
So, did you end up seeking like psychiatric help?
Yeah. With the mental health system I had been exposed to, it was difficult. At least the one I was exposed to growing up, because there wasn't much of one.
Right.
But like I spoke to walk-in clinics and like I would go into walk-in mental health clinics and stuff like that when I was at my worst, and they gave me some ideas, and I've spoken to people and stuff like that, and I'm still working through finding a good, like a proper counselor as well, like a proper therapist kind of thing.
That's good.
But yeah, like it helped. It helped at least seeing a professional, obviously, because you know I was in a kinesiology degree for a while, right? So like a scientific perspective makes sense to me. But you know, so when somebody's able to look at me from a professional background, I can trust their information a lot more than just than just a colleague, obviously, because they are not a professional, right? So they can only do so much. But yeah, it was like I didn't really seek the psychiatric help as much as I should have, because to me, all the symptoms of what I was dealing with seemed physical, like requiring medical help. There was one point where I had an asthma attack that was so bad that was perpetuated by my anxiety that I was hacking up blood because there was so much pressure in my airways from me just hacking up phlegm. And then he was like, you got to go to the ER, bro, because she's a nurse now. She's in nursing.
Yeah.
At least now. And because we all thought it was like a medical thing, like an asthma related thing. And obviously the ER was there for hours. They couldn't find anything. So they sent me home. And I probably, in hindsight, the next day should have gone and seen somebody at a psychiatric, like to see psychiatric help, because I knew it was directly related to my anxiety, but I just didn't want to, admit that to myself, because then to me, even now, it's difficult to be open about, in that, especially around especially around even just like friends, like on a regular basis kind of thing. Like it takes a lot for me to break myself down enough that I can be comfortable opening it up about it. And it was just like one of those instances where I just felt like it wasn't appropriate to talk about the fact that, this is anxiety related. To me, in my mind, I felt like that was just going to make things worse for my anxiety if I did that. So I just wanted to leave it until I felt better, and then be open about it. But I don't know if I ever did. So if you guys are watching this, that's why. Oops. But it was, I didn't know how to cope.
I just picked up on what he said.
Was that?
Yeah.
Oh.
He didn't share.
I just
shout out to your friends.
Like I mean, like they know, like they
Yeah.
I've been able to be open a lot more about my mental health now. But like the issue for me is that growing up, from the get-go, I was looked at as a person who had to be strong for the sake of being, for the sake of others. I've got this tattoo on my arm that I got 2 years ago. Would have been 2 years ago now, 2 falls ago.
That says Lynds long.
Yeah. It's lines. It's lines. It's like paper lines, but with a D, because I'm a dickhead. But this is my father, like my last name, like my dad's last name, Lynds, and this is my mom's last name, Long. And this is the Celtic symbol for brotherhood. So I'm predominantly Gaelic in my background.
Is that your brother's initials?
Yeah, Cameron, who's the middle child, and Adrian, who's the youngest. And that's mine, obviously.
Top of the heap.
Yeah, I'm the oldest, so it makes sense, right?
The alpha.
The egotistical one. I'm better than you. Just kidding. JK. But yeah, I got it done because I was dealing with a lot of stress. I didn't know if I was ready for university. We had to leave our home, like the place that we had kind of like the area we had all grown up in Nova Scotia, to go to where my stepdad lives, because we couldn't afford to live at the place we were. And there was some divorce stuff that was going on between my mom and my dad, and it was a lot of chaos.
Yeah.
So I was like in a mentally just tough place, because I was under a lot of pressure from myself to do well, but also because I was trying to set an example for my younger brothers that it doesn't matter where you come from, you can accomplish anything. Which this was always a reminder of that, and also to keep me home. It's because from as young as 5, I was like I was responsible for my brothers growing up.
Yeah.
So I had, in my mind, I had to be strong. I had to be rigid, and I had to, show that it doesn't matter the shit we go through. We can always get through it, and we can always become better people and accomplish so much. So through that, as young as 5, I kind of developed toxic masculinity traits really early on, in that like I just wouldn't be open about my emotions. I would just put my head down and handle it, kind of thing. Like I was just I can handle this. I'm the big brother. I have to be strong because my brothers need me to be strong right now for whatever reason, be it a death in the family, or we're dealing with chaotic household kind of thing, or whatever it was. I felt like I had to be the strong one. Mm-hmm. But I remember, oh God, it would have been, oh Jesus, like almost 7. No, it can't be 7. 7 years ago. I was like 17. I would have been. It's probably not that long ago. I'm really bad at math. It was a while ago. It was like right in the middle of the divorce. I was like turning 17, so 16, I guess. It was like December. No, it would have been January. So maybe I was just turned 17. My mom and my dad were arguing over the phone. I was sitting on my bed with my baby brother, who was like, I think 8 at the time, just a kid. He didn't understand what was going on, but I just remember he was like kind of laying in my lap, like half sobbing. And I was like, this is the point where I could just as easily just break down right now. But in my mind, I was like, I have to swallow this back and deal with it because he needs me right now. Mm-hmm. So stuff like that was just all the time. Mm-hmm. And it was really difficult to deal with the after effects of that as I got older. But it was all I knew. It was my life, right? Like I didn't think anything of it. So I didn't really learn how to cope with my mental health until like halfway through my first year at P.E.I, which was my 3rd year of Postsecondary. So I was like a 21-year-old man who suddenly realized he had feelings. And that was like terrifying. Who suddenly realized that I can be vulnerable and it's okay to be vulnerable, because I was surrounded by a lot of people who were very like, it's okay to open up, right? Like you're allowed to be that person. Mm-hmm. So that was terrifying to me at first, coming from rough and rugged roots and then being just the powerlifting meathead. Like my nickname home is the caveman, right? Like that's still tried and true, because I was a big bearded meathead who like would just be a battering ram in general towards life. And suddenly I cracked, right? I just cracked, and the emotions came pouring out because I just couldn't hold them back anymore. So then, that just sort of led to both a spiraling down point, but then also a major stage of growth for me. Yeah.
So that happened halfway through your 3rd year at P.E.I.
Yeah.
So do you want to talk a little bit about where it went from there, your kind of experiences, and then like kind of to where you are now?
So this last year and a half has been the most difficult year of my life, like this difficult year and a half of my life, but also one of some of the best times of my life as well. So during this time frame, Amy and I were kind of like we were both dealing with a lot of shit, but we both had each other's back. So we both like just trained through it, studied through it, worked through it, and then eventually both realized like, hey, this isn't a healthy way of dealing with things. And she was the first to realize before I was.
So Amy, for people who don't know, it was your friend that you met at P.E.I?
Yeah, we met when I started there. So it was like the orientation day. And we actually met playing Capture the Flag, and she football tackled me and flipped me over her shoulder. And she's like half my weight.
What a badass.
I know, eh? That's what I thought. So she's the definition of a badass woman. Like,
that's awesome.
She's been through hell and high water, and she's been through all like 16 levels of shit, but she's the nicest, most genuine human being I've ever met. Like just genuinely a sweetheart. And I met her at the orientation day. We like partnered up for some team building exercises, quote unquote, kind of thing, where like you just partner up for different activities. Then we competed against each other at Capture the Flag. One girl was like down. She was going to tag her back into the game. I was running full tilt, and I just see this poor girl hit the dirt out of the corner of my eye. I'm like, I'm about to kill this kid, and I just fucking met her. And she just tucks her shoulder and just dead ass flips me. Like, I go ass over tea kettle, like right in my solar plexus, knocks the wind out of me. I'm like getting up. Fuck, are you okay? Like, make sure I didn't kill her. And she's like, yeah, bro, I'm good. How about you? I'm like, this chick's a badass. I want to be friends with her. So, and then off we went. And then, like that winter, we both went through some really difficult times in our lives. And I just had a breakdown stage because I was trying to be strong for both her and me, and I couldn't. And I was also trying to be strong for like stuff going on home with my family, and my grandfather had almost died, and I was dealing with a lot of pressure. And I remember I just had a breakdown stage where I had this massive anxiety attack before I got to the gym, and she like pulled me aside and like like sat with me for a few hours kind of thing to help me kind of get through it. And yeah, that was the first time I ever had one of those. So it's like your world sort of, you're looking at it from, it's like you're looking at it from behind a window and you're not in control. So like you just kind of, your brain puts you in a cage and your body just kicks into fight or flight mode, and your heart rate dials up to 11, you can't breathe, your vision's hazy, you feel sick to your stomach, you're sweating buckets, and you're not doing anything. Like you're in full freak out mode. You feel like you're about to die. And I just didn't understand what the fuck was going on. But I was overworked, overtired, running on 3 hours of sleep at a time because I was trying to do well in school, and I was really bad at advanced science classes because I didn't understand it. I had a grade, like I was like 2 years general understanding behind everybody else in like chemistry and calculus and physics and stuff, but I was still trying to do it. And at university, it's not like when you're at the college where like the teachers are actually willing to help you get through it. It's like at university, it's sink or fucking swim, right? Like good luck, but when nobody's handing you anything, you got to go out and get it. So it was really difficult on me. And during this period, like she was always there for me through it. So then at one point I remember, and it was actually like that summer, she just straight up told me, it's like, bro, your biggest issue is that you don't love yourself. It's like you're willing to sacrifice and take time and look after everybody else, even when you're half holding yourself together with like duct tape and scotch and a couple prayers, and you're still taking care of other people because you refuse to take care of yourself and look at yourself in the mirror and say, what do I need to work on? Mm-hmm. And what do I have to deal with? Mm-hmm. So that, on top of the injuries that I had, I couldn't powerlift. I could barely lift. I was out of shape. I was depressed. I wasn't the caveman that I knew myself as. I was a different person. I was a different person than when I started post-secondary education, period. I just felt broken. So I spent that summer like teaching myself how to, teaching myself how to become accustomed to my situation and how to kind of just deal with it. And then the fall, I focused a lot on my mental health and was like balancing school. And then I was also like helping Amy and Nick get ready for their wedding because they got engaged the summer previous kind of thing. And I was helping them with that because I was essentially family to them at that point. And they looked at me they both look at me as a brother. And I was a groomsman, so I was like helping them prepare. And it's just a lot of stress, but like I was trying to manage it. And then the winter came. And the wedding was wonderful. It was a great time. I found out that I dance like Terry Crews when you put on old time rock and roll and give me a glass of red wine. I mean, I'm going. Forget about it. Dance floor is mine. and I look great in purple suspenders, might I add. Goddamn. There's pictures on Facebook. But as a result, like after all that like really good time comes Christmas. Christmas was great. I was kind of rebuilding my relationship with my father, which I'm still working on rebuilding a lot even now, and it's a lot better than it used to be. Yeah. But then came this point where I was what was it, midwinter? And I just remember I was in an exam. I think I was in a midterm for chemistry. And I was just like, I don't know why I'm doing this. And it wasn't even just the school, but it was just in general. I was like, what am I doing this for again? And I was like trying to convince myself, like, you want to be a strength and conditioning coach. That's why you came for the degree. That's what you've been working your ass off for all this time. And I'm like, do I really? And I was like, or was that just because like I expected myself to be that because that was the path I was on, and I was too rigid to look any other way.
Mm-hmm.
So then I remember I just bullshit the rest of the exam. I think I just like put my name on all the pages to make it look like I wrote something, and then I walked out.
Mm-hmm.
And I just left. And then
Yeah.
I went the next day and I said I'm resigning. And I just left to P.E.I. And then I hopped into a course called Youth and Trades, which was basically I decided I wanted to get in trades. Cool. Great way to make money. I was halfway through it, and I knew the minute I first stepped foot into that building that I did not belong there. I belong in a gym environment. I'm a motivator's environment. I belong working with people. The trades are great. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah.
If you're good at them and you love them, power to you. But it wasn't for me. And then
Right.
after that program, after the classroom portion, I told them straight up, not for me. And this was the first time in my life that I was free from any obligation. And this is the first time in my life where I was looking around. And keep in mind, I was already involved with the youth group that I'm with now. Amy had gotten involved the Christmas of the year that we had met and then introduced me to them. And then through them, we both developed something that was both a really anchoring group and like people we consider family who helped us get through all kinds of hard shit. And some of the best friends I've ever asked for in the whole world, like my tribe, like these are my people. And all they want to do is help people. And so like this, I left Youth and Trades. I didn't really want to go back to school. I didn't have the mental interest in it at all. Still half contemplating it. And then I was like working on my business. I was building my brand Stormside Fitness, by the way, which is just, I was just designing plans, selling programs, looking for clients kind of thing. And I was like, I knew that I needed to prioritize both my mental health, things I enjoyed, like just competing in powerlifting for fun and focusing on that. And also just, exploring things while I'm young. At least while I'm like just in my early 20s, mid 20s.
Mm-hmm.
So, and I knew I needed to do all these things because for the first time in my life, I had no idea who the fuck Austin Lynds was.
Austin Lynds.
Austin Lynds. Austin Lynds. But I'd grown up as a nickname was the Caveman, Klaus the Caveman, Forehead of Thunder, like all those. The Forehead of Thunder was like the earliest. Like I walked into a grade 7 orientation thing when I was like grade 6, and then like a couple of the kids in the class that knew me just looked at me, like, holy shit, look at the size of that kid's fucking forehead, because as big as it is now, but my face was like this. So yeah, I hadn't grown into it.
It grew first.
Yeah, the forehead grew first, and then everything else grew.
That's out of big head too.
Yeah,
I can relate.
yeah, it's just one of those things, right? So, but yeah, so from like I had just been recognized as this meathead who was a personal trainer and a weightlifter, and that was it, as far as I knew, and a motivator as well. But for the first time in my life, I didn't see myself as any of those things. I didn't see myself as Austin Lynds the Caveman. I didn't see myself as Austin Lynds the powerlifter or the personal trainer. I didn't identify just with that anymore, because during my time of self-exploration, I became a published writer through P.E.I. I've just been writing all the time now. I started
Good for you. I didn't know that.
I started posting stuff like a lot more online, doing a lot more just as an online, just in general. Haven't done much now because I've been so busy with the group. But I was also volunteering with these beautiful, beautiful kids that I work with now in the Junior Youth Empowerment Program, which are like junior high kids. And what we do is focus on developing these kids spiritually, as well as personally, like developing genuine friendships with these kids, and then focusing on developing the community around them. Through service learning projects, moral teachings, that kind of stuff. All run up the Bahai Community, but you don't have to be Bahai. You don't even have to be religious to be a part of it. It's just we want to bring people together to help the community.
Right. So the program unit is called the Bahai Community?
So the Bahai Community runs the program. The
Okay.
program itself is the Junior Youth Empowerment Program, or Spiritual Empowerment Program, if you want to use the full term.
Okay.
It's run by the Bahai Community, which is a faith, like a religion kind of thing. But the religious belief is like what Jesus was saying, what Muhammad was saying, what everybody else has been saying at the end of the day, which is just love each other, take care of each other, and uplift the community. Like at its core, has been meddled with and fucked with so much that, this guy who was named Abdul Bahai came out of Iran. He's like, okay, I don't know what part of you motherfuckers missed love thy neighbor, but it means love thy neighbor. Like it means love each other, take care of each other. So he was just basically promoting the idea is like, doesn't matter what background you come from or what race or religion, whatever. It's like we should all be eliminating these borders we're setting for ourselves and just learning how to embrace each other as people, because we're all one species, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, it's also one of the few religions that, you know, correlate religion and science together, right? It's not just like one or the other. So sort of a modernized version, I guess, of what religion would be. But the big reason for me was that I got to get involved with the community, work with kids, which I love doing, I found out, and also work with people from all around the world, right? Which was really cool to me, and just make friends all around the world. If you're part of the community, literally, we made friends in Montreal that treat us like what they've known us for years.
That's awesome.
Right? Like when I was in Montreal, we didn't stay at hotels. We stayed at friends' places. Right?
That's sweet.
Yeah. And it was just like no expectations, nothing. They was like, yeah, you're welcome to the home. We'll show you around. We'll hang out. It's like, just like anywhere you go, you've got people no matter what. So during this period of time when I left school and the youth and trades, I was like, all I want to do is first explore myself, learn what it means to be this person now that I know what it means to be vulnerable, what it means to recognize that I've got mental health issues that I need to rectify, and also understand who I'm growing into. And during this process, there's probably no better way for me realistically at the time to do that than by, you know, working with this group, which also forces you to do a lot of self-examination and really focus on developing your own character along with these kids. Because I learn more from these kids than they learn from me. So as a result, like I just kind of hopped in. I said, yeah, I'm going to serve full time. And the company, quote unquote, the Bahai Institute, which is like their version of like a World Trade Center, like their headquarters in like the Middle East, will pay you donations to cover your general expenses so that you can serve full time during the summer if you're part of the community. So that's what I've been doing since. And yeah, I guess since then, my mental health has just rapidly improved, right? Like I don't live a life of luxury by any means right now, but for the first time in a long time, I'm just really at peace with who I'm becoming, which is really cool for me. Like, it's not a matter of like, I'm getting up in the mirror, I'm like, oh, I'm too fat, or like, oh, I'm too not strong enough, or I'm like this or that, or I got to train 3 times in a day or something like that, and I got hiccups. But it's now, I'm looking at myself in the mirror and I'm like, you know what? I'm okay with who I'm becoming. And to me, that's really like, I'm able to train and do all that stuff, but it's not like I'm going to have a mental breakdown if I miss a couple of days. Or if I screw up on my meals or whatever, right? Like if I don't eat the healthiest, like I'm able to be a human being again, which for me, I don't remember the last time I was able to. So, and I still struggle with my mental health. I still struggle with spells of depression where I'm just like, I don't have the energy or the mental strength to deal with anything today, and I need to take time for me, and they get it. They're like, yeah, you just, whatever you need, we're there. And there's days where my anxiety's all out of whack, and I deal with it appropriately this time, but it's like those days are far less, right? It's like it's not so much this never-ending problem as much as it is something like I'm managing it, I'm dealing with it, I'm coping, and I'm learning how to make it a strength rather than a weakness for me.
That's awesome, man. I think that sounds like really healthy and like good for you that you found this community, found like a strong sense of community. Then it sounds like you've been exploring yourself and learning who you are, who you want to be, and how to take care of yourself, mental health. I think that's awesome.
I'm getting there. Definitely getting there. It's interesting because you don't see it much in the fitness world. Like you don't see this kind of stuff much because the expectation is that you're just, you know, your focus is fitness. You don't broadcast yourself much. But during, you know, my journey kind of through all this, I've been very open, at least on social media, as a lifter, about the impact of mental health on my training and stuff like that. Not very open, but to some capacity. Like I've not denied it. I've been kind of expressing it as an open book the last few years because I feel like if people can look at me and they can see this person as like this big bearded powerlifter who looks like he was just found in the woods somewhere lifting boulders, can openly admit it's like sometimes I don't want to get out of bed because I'm depressed, then, you know, it makes, but like I'm still able to do the things that I'm able to do. For somebody else who's dealing with that, for them, like they can accomplish that too. And that's what I love about things like powerlifting and stuff like that. It's like anybody can powerlift. I know a guy, I was at the CPF Open a couple months ago. Zach Davidson was there. A couple of the Holland College boys were there. But then also, like, there was a 96-year-old dude with Parkinson's or something like that.
Really? What a badass.
Yeah, and he was tearing up. And there was a guy who had like a form of cerebral palsy.
Yeah.
Like, he could walk, but it was like his legs didn't work like the best.
Yeah.
And he was out there, and he's been competing in like multiple competitions throughout like the last few years, and he's dropping bodies all the time, posting his workouts, everything.
That's awesome.
And I'm like, anybody can do this sport. Anybody.
Mm-hmm.
And it's, you know, so, you know, if you're dealing with mental health issues and stuff like that, but then you decide to do something like that, that in itself is just as much a win, if not more so, because people don't always realize the impact on mental health in people, right? Until they actually see it, right? Until you know, things get, either people are open about it, or they see somebody have a breakdown, or, you know, things go too far with somebody's mental health, whatever it might be. People don't always see how difficult it is, right? That people love to talk about it, but they don't always see how difficult the struggles of mental health can be. So when somebody who is able to do all kinds of good things when they're dealing with mental health and inspire other people through that, then, you know, it gives those people who struggle with that kind of monkey on their back a lot of hope.
Mm-hmm.
At least that's what I'm hoping I'm doing.
Mm-hmm.
Right?
Yeah, and I think that's, you know, that's the reason why I wanted to make this, was just to open the door and have all kinds of people on, just because there is really no certain kind of person that deals with mental health. I think we all do in some form.
Yeah. Well, mental health is no different than physical health. The only difference is we can't see it.
Mm-hmm, exactly, yeah.
You can see a broken bone.
Yeah.
You can see the cast on somebody's arm, and you're like, oh, fuck, I'm sorry. Like, what can I do to help? But you can't see somebody who might have had several panic attacks this morning before going out to work, to school, right? Because they've got their game face on now. They're focused. They've got the panic attacks out of their system, right? You don't see that as much anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, my last guest, Jackie McGee, we were talking about, we both experienced some heavy grief over last year. She lost her son to cancer 3 years ago. But anyway, we're talking about, she was telling a story about how when she was at the grocery store and she just kind of felt horrible. Like, she was saying, like, it must look normal to people around me, but like, I'm just dealing with so much. I can't be normal. But I think it's just, that rings true to like any mental health situation, is like, you can look normal on the outside, but like, you never know what someone's going through inside their head.
Yeah, I think so. Like, I've dealt with a lot of trauma throughout my life, and I've seen people who've dealt with a lot of trauma throughout their life. Like, I've been to probably more funerals than I'd like to openly admit. And it's not something that you can just brush off and go about your business dealing with. It's stuff like that you got to carry for the rest of your life sometimes. And it's not always an easy way to carry, even for a powerlifter. It can be really overwhelming, I guess is the term I'm looking for. And there's points where you can be completely fine, and then there's points where it's just, you know what, your brain's going to give you a kick in the dick today. And it's going to be a hard fucking day to get out of bed. And it's going to be a hard day to get things done, but you're in the middle of like a busy week or exams, or the busiest week of your work season, or whatever it might be, or you're in the middle of a prep for a competition, be it bodybuilding, powerlifting, whatever, and you have to put on your game face, and you still have to do that. Sometimes the world still expects you to do that regardless of what you're dealing with inside. And that itself is the hardest part of mental health, because especially, I can't speak for women, obviously, because I'm not a woman, but for guys, I feel like it's a different battle altogether, because we ourselves are expected at a societal standard to be strong, kind of like, you know, the whole toxic masculinity trend that's become apparent lately. And I've spoken a lot about it. I've been very outspoken about it, in that they expect us to be rough and rugged and emotionless. And it's still a very real thing. So like, even sometimes when you confide in your friends, then they're not always like, they don't always fully understand what you're dealing with. But you just need somebody to talk to, but they might not always be there, or they can't fully grasp it, or they almost make you feel bad for confiding in them for whatever reason. And that in itself is a really difficult thing, because you know they don't mean anything by it, but it still fucking stings. And sometimes it's just like, they might not know what to say or whatever, and they might not respond, and even that sometimes might just fucking sting like a motherfucker.
Mm-hmm.
And it's just one of those things that, you know, the world expects us to kind of trek on. Less so now, because mental health is becoming a stronger conversation
Mm-hmm.
than it was 10 years ago, even 5 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
But it's still sometimes a thing that people deal with, in that the world just expects them to kind of buck up and deal. Guy, girl, I don't know what it's like for girls, but like for the most part I've seen is that they expected guys to just sort of suck it up and handle it more so, depending on the situation, I guess, at a large scale societal standard. But like, you know, and I can't speak for the opposite gender because I don't know what they deal with on a regular, right? But
yeah, I think both genders deal with different challenges, but I think maybe, and this is just from, you know, my observation. To what you said, I think it's very important to have like close friends that you can open up to. Yeah. Guys or girls, like your friend from school. Mm-hmm. I also think, for like a lot of times, I think it's hard for people to understand mental health if they've never been through it. Yeah. It's kind of hard to understand. You kind of understand to the depth that you've been through it, maybe. Yeah. Seems. But, you know, that being said, you should try to be supportive of your friends if they're going through a hard time, 100%.
Absolutely.
Absolutely. But I think maybe girls, like close friends, are more emotionally supportive with each other, whereas guys aren't always that way.
I feel like they have a stronger emotional intelligence than we do.
Yeah.
That makes sense. The capacity to show empathy. Because I have a lot of friends that are girls. Like throughout most of my life, I've always had a best friend that's a girl. I don't know why. It's just always has been. Mm-hmm. And I think it's partially because they're more emotionally aware than we are. Because, you know, let's be realistic. Guys are dumb. We're dumb as shit.
Can be.
Yeah, we can be dumb as shit, right? Like especially like in certain topics. Like we're like, because of how we're raised, how we're bred, how we think, sometimes, or at least how society teaches us to think, we're not always the most emotionally aware right off the bat. Yeah. At least not at the same capacity that, like, in a stereotypical case that a woman might be, kind of thing. So yeah, I think they do definitely, in some cases, have like a stronger emotional support system
for each other. It seems.
Yeah, which is really good.
Close friends.
I'm really good that I see that a lot because. And it's really comforting to see, right? Because, you know, it shows people aren't dealing with that kind of thing alone all the time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think the suicide rate is 80% men or something. Yeah, something like that.
It's like 80. I think it's like 82 or something.
Yeah. And I mean, no suicide is like my girlfriend committed suicide. Mm-hmm. Obviously a girl, and she did it in a way, you know, she hung herself, which is like, that's like the lowest percentage suicide, you know, so like the percentages don't mean too much to me. I don't think any suicide is a good suicide, but clearly 80% of suicides being men. There's something going on with men not talking about their feelings enough. Yeah. It seems.
I think so. In rural communities, I think I can't speak for places that aren't rural, but I mean, in general, society expects men to be the tough, like emotionally strong provider, fighter, warrior, big gruff dude to handle it. They expect us to not be emotionally vulnerable. They expect us to be almost brick walls. And in rural areas, it's dialed up by 11. Yeah. Like, I don't know if people like my dad's age have any idea what mental health is about. I don't know if they do. It's hard for my dad to relate to me because I'm much more emotionally aware. And he's trying to be supportive, like he is. Like anytime he says, like, look, if you need somebody to pay for counseling or whatever, like, I got you. And to me, that was huge when he said that. I was like, holy shit. but I feel like for him personally, he might not always be as emotionally aware of his situation when he's dealing with stuff like that as he thinks. And that's not his fault. That's just the world he was raised in. Because like 20 years before I was born, if you said somebody's like, I can't come into work today because my depression is through the roof, he'd be like, what the fuck, you're fired, right? Like straight up.
Yeah.
But now if you do that, it's like, okay, I understand. Well, a lot of places will connect you with counselors, that kind of stuff. Like, it's a different world we live in. And in guys, they were raised, especially where I grew up, in an old-fashioned belief. Even some of my best friends in the world from home deal with mental health the old-fashioned way, which is either you don't talk about it, you don't deal with the feelings openly, you don't communicate with your friends openly, and you just drink, or you pick fights or whatever, right, to get you through your system.
Yeah, there's a lot of that.
And there's a lot of that, and some of the closest friends I have from home, I know deal with that kind of stuff, and all I can do is open the door and say, look, whatever you need, I'm there. Like, if you need to talk about it, the door's open, but I can't force that out of them, because that just isolates you from them, right? That just that'll just push them away. But I always make it a point. It's like, whatever you need, I've got you. For when people are dealing with that kind of stuff, because I think even just having that support is enough sometimes for some people. Just knowing that there's people looking out for them and there's people that want them to get through the day, kind of thing, and rooting for them and supporting them in whatever they need, they got you. But I think for guys, it can even be more so, because that's sometimes the closest they get to actual support with mental health, right? So,
yeah. So you said you write for for UPEI?
Yeah, I actually did a piece. It's called Fatherhood. It's in one of the published UPEI arts reviews. It would be the UPEI arts review that was published, and it was titled Abandoned. Sold at the bookstore. You can buy it for like $5 at UPEI. It's like a picture of a girl. She's like sitting in a bath. You can't see anything suggestive, but it's like she's like naked in a bathtub, but you can only see the top of her head, and that's it. And her like kind of kneeling in the bathtub. And it's like a show of vulnerability. Like, the theme is vulnerability. Amy actually is a published writer through it too, and we both tackled topics that are very near and dear to our hearts, connected to both of our struggles personally. I talked about fatherhood because I've been very adamant about the topic of fatherhood and being a good man and what it means to be a good man. Not in the traditional gruff, rough and tumble. You gotta change your tire before you can walk, and you gotta piss lightning and eat cardboard, and like that kind of mentality, right? Like, not that.
Piss lightning.
I mean, I can do that, but it's a trick. No, I'm just kidding. But so like, I've been very open about my, not vendetta, but my, like, me speaking out against like deadbeat dads, or like fathers that don't know how to be fathers, or men that don't know how to be men because they spent their whole lives being told to, embrace these things that we know now is what's considered like, toxic as hell in regards to behavior, like emotionally, and how you treat people and stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I tackled the topic of fatherhood and what it meant to be a father. And I don't like how the piece turned out in their arts review personally. Because my original piece I wrote is like at a slam poetry event at the campus that I was invited to go to, and it was super fucking raw, just straight from the gut. And I feel like a lot of that got taken out through the editing process and everything else like that with the editors and stuff. But I'm happy and proud that I got to do that. And since then, I've been writing a lot. I do writing pieces all the time. I have a bunch on my Google Docs, and I write in my journal every day. Mostly every day. It's actually a good way for me to evaluate myself during my mental health journey, which has been really helpful. It's been really insightful for me to be able to look at what I'm thinking and put it on paper and kind of go through it and understand it and analyze it and think about it and really examine why I think the way I do and why I deal with the things the way I deal with them. And it's really helped me accountable. And it's also just a good way to, to vent, to be creative, to do something that's different. Like, if you had asked me 10 years ago if I was wearing like little reading glasses that make me look like, somebody's grandfather and like writing in a little notebook, I would be like, what the fuck? No, give me a barbell. I mean, like, there's different, like, I don't know if you've seen Endgame. The Avengers movie,
yeah.
So the Hulk in Endgame. It's
That's where you're at now.
It's like kind of like that's kind of where I'm at now. like a mixture of that and like Thor at that point. Like Thor definitely during the winter, but like Hulk much more so like now kind of thing. And
Hulk and Bruce Banner put together.
Yeah, like
you still got the muscles, but you get the glasses.
yeah, exactly. Now I got little reading glasses in my bag all the time, and like I can't read because my eyes are going.
Yeah,
and all that stuff. So, it's just it's an interesting change in development. It's like the caveman shaved his beard a little bit every so often, and combed his hair and learned how to be a human being outside of just this angry brute inside.
Yeah.
And it was really like it's cool because during this process I've been able to do things I never thought I'd be able to do. Got to travel to Montreal. I've never been outside of Atlantic Canada once in my life up until like last weekend. And that was a huge experience for me. I'm going to Berwick, Nova Scotia, never been, and I'm going there for a summer camp to work with kids the entire weekend, like this weekend coming.
That's awesome.
My ex, like the girl that I had a really bad breakup with, who was like one of my best friends growing up through like back home. We're on great terms now. We're really civil. And she's actually looking about getting involved with the program that they're having, like because they have programs all over Atlantic Canada, all over the world, like same deal, just different places. And she wants to get involved because she heard about it through me, and she's like, I want to get involved with this because it seems like I could really benefit from it, and it seems like something that'd be really good to be a part of. And I was like, yeah. So then we set up meetings, and I got to meet with her for the first time in like almost 3 years, and have the conversation, like kind of catch up and put things to bed and make peace. And now we're on good terms. And we talk all the time, and it was a really, to me, that was like, especially like where I was when I left college and I had all this baggage on my back and all these issues that I was dealing with. Like,
it's almost like a full circle.
Yeah, it feels like I finally tied up a major chapter that I left open for a long time, that I finally put to bed, and like a major monkey on my back, I finally was able to get off it and make peace with. But I wouldn't have had the emotional strength or the courage to first send that message of like, I think it was like I was actually in the ER at the time. And I looked up at the screen, and I knew she went to school like in Halifax. I don't remember even the school. And I just remember looking up, and there was like a shooter scare at Halifax General Library. And I was like, fuck, I know people in Halifax. So I messaged like everybody I could think of that lived in the area, and she was one of those people. And I didn't even think about it at the time. But in hindsight, I don't think I would have had the emotional strength. And it turns out the shooter was like some drunk with a pellet gun, but like I had no idea. And then it was like, you haven't messaged me in 3 years. What the fuck? I was like, well, yeah, I don't know how that happened. And then we just kind of talked. And I was like, we were on civil terms. We're good friends now. And from there, I was like, in hindsight, I would never have even expected to have the emotional capacity to do that even 6 months before that without having an anxiety attack in hindsight. Because there was so much emotional stuff there, right? There was so much baggage there.
Right. Of course.
So I bet through things like this group and through things like me being able to develop myself emotionally and spiritually and so on through this group, I've had the strength to make peace with things that I never, like develop a good relationship with my dad. Like it's still building it kind of thing. Like we're able to talk a lot more and be civil. And like I even helped him move a mattress like a couple of weeks ago when I was home, which for me is a big thing. Make peace with my ex and be able to look at myself with this sense of peace and recognize like at the end of the day, it's going to be okay. Right. Which for me was huge, because if you'd said that 6 months ago, I'd be like, oh yeah. And then in my mind, I'm like, no, the fuck it's not, like kind of thing in my mind. But, yeah, things have kind of come really full circle for me. And I recognize that it's not going to be sunshine and gumdrops forever kind of thing. Like there's going to be hard times throughout my life, all my life. That's a given, especially when you deal with mental health.
Of course.
But I'm prepared for them, I think, more so now than I ever have been. Yeah. And I know I can get through them. Yeah. Which if you, like 6 months ago, I would not have been able to say that I'd be able to get through it. Yeah. So for me, I feel like as a result of me forcing myself to take care of it and to actually look at myself in that way and look at myself as emotionally vulnerable and basically broken, but it could be repaired. It really helped my growth. It really helped me grow as a person in a lot of different ways.
That's awesome, man. I'm really happy for you. And it sounds like you've done a lot of growing in the recent past, and found some really healthy ways to deal with your mental health. And like, I think it's a really good message. And everything you just said. I like, thanks so much for coming on and sharing your story, man. Like, I really appreciate it.
It's all good, bro.
I love you, dude.
Me too.
Great talking to you.
It's great talking to you, buddy.